I've got a really quick tutorial for you today. We're going to be making these cute brick stitch earrings around a hoop, and I've kept it real simple, adding just 3 rows of 11 delica beads, and then we're going to add a picot edge on that last row using some faceted rondelles and delica beads. So stick around if you want to see how that's done, and by the end of this video you'll know how to master that technique of adding those delicas to the hoop, how to get that brick stitch started, how to step up into a new row, and how to add that picot edge. And to finish that off, I just dangled a bicone bead off the hook there as well into the center of that hoop. So stick around, I'll show you what we need to get started, and then we'll jump straight in. Here's what you'll need. Starting from the left, I'm using 3mm faceted glass rondelles. I'm using a grey colour today. Then I've got a selection of 3 different coloured delica beads. You can also use seed beads. I'm using size 11/0, and I've got galvanised silver and 2 different pink colours there. I don't actually know the colours off the top of my head because I've popped those into my jars and haven't labelled them with the colour name, but I've got a very light pink on the right and then a more baby colour pink to the left. And then I'm using 6mm crystal bicones. Those are Preciosa rose coloured crystals. And for the hoop, I'm just using a metal hoop that's approximately 1.5 centimetre diameter, and then 2 sterling silver earring hooks. And these are the exact quantities that we'll be using per earring, keeping it nice and simple, as I said, using just 11 delica beads per row for that brick stitch, and then just 7 rondelles with 6 delicas for that picot edge. And lastly, here are the tools and thread we'll be using to make each earring. Okay, to get started, just pick up your hoop and thread your fire line through the hoop. You want to leave yourself about 2 to 3 inches tail of thread, and then we're just going to tie that in a double knot. So now, using the working thread, which is the longer length of thread, thread your needle, and we're going to start by picking up 2 galvanised silver 11/0 delica beads. Place your needle through the hoop and pull the beads down onto the top of the hoop, pulling the thread all the way through. You then want to take your needle and go back up through the delica bead on the right, pulling that all the way through, and then down through the delica bead to its left, and then back up through the bead on the right. And that will straighten those beads up, and that's the first step in attaching your beads to the hoop. Now we're going to continue and add the remaining 9 galvanised silver beads by picking up just 1 delica bead each time. So again, going through the hoop, pulling the delica bead onto the top of the hoop, and then going up through the delica bead, pulling that thread nice and tight onto that hoop. And we're going to repeat that process now until we've added all of those galvanised silver delica beads, picking up 1 bead at a time. And once we've added the last delica bead in that row, so there's 11 in each row, we will then need to step up and create the second row. Now you should have something that looks like this. We've added all 11 delica beads to that first row. So now we're going to start building that out and adding the new row. To add the second row, we're going to be using the lighter pink, and then the third row we'll be using the darker pink. Your working thread is currently on the right hand side. You want to turn your hoop around so that the working thread is on the left. And every time you start a new row, you'll be picking up 2 Delica beads. And you'll see now that you've got a thread bridge across the top of each of those Delica beads on the first row. We're going to be using those thread bridges to attach our new row of beads. So take your needle and skip the first thread bridge and go under the second thread bridge, pulling those Delicas down onto that first row of beads. Go up through the bead on the right, pulling tight, and then down through the bead to its left. And then you want to come up back through the bead on the right. And just like we did on the first row, we're now going to add 1 bead at a time until we filled that row. So pick up 1 bead, go under the next thread bridge, pulling that down, and then going up through the bead, pulling that tight. Now we're going to just continue to add 1 bead at a time, going under the next thread bridge, up through the bead, and continue to do that until you've added all 11 beads on that row. And that's your second row complete. Just like we did before, we're going to turn that around so that our working thread is on the left, and we're going to create the third row of beads. So again, picking up 2 Delica beads. This is in the darker pink, the baby pink. Skipping the first thread bridge and going under the second thread bridge, pulling your bead onto that second row of beads, going down through the bead on the left, and then up through the bead again to its right, pulling that nice and tight. And again, we're going to repeat that process all the way along until you've added all 11 Delica beads to that row, picking up 1 bead at a time. Same process, go under the thread bridge, pull that bead down, and then go up through the bottom of that bead, pulling that nice and tight. And just continue to do that until you've added all 11 beads to that row. Okay, so now we've reached the last bead in that row, going up through the bottom of that bead, coming out the top. Now we've added all 3 rows using the brick stitch technique. So the last thing we're going to do is add that picot edge. So turn that around again, and this time we're going to be adding an extra bead. So we're going to be picking up 2 rondelles, but in the middle of those 2 rondelles will be a Delica bead. And because the rondelles are bigger than those Delicas, we're actually going to skip the first 2 thread bridges this time and go under the third thread bridge. Pull that down and then go up through the rondelle on the right. And then we're going to go through the Delica and the rondelle to the left. And then we're going to come up back through the rondelle on the right, pulling that nice and tight. So that's the first stage of your picot edge. And now we're going to pick up 1 Delica and 1 rondelle and just go under the next thread bridge. So again, going up through the rondelle. And now you'll just add 1 Delica and 1 rondelle each time. Until we get to the end. Okay, so now we've reached the end of that row and your working thread is coming out the top of that last bead on the right. We're going to go through the Delica on the left and then down the rondelle to its left. We're just going to start working that thread through a few of those beads, and then we're going to tie our thread off in a knot. To do that, I'm just going to go under one of those thread bridges, wrap my thread around, pulling that down, tying that off in a knot. Now I'm going to place my needle down through a delica and pull that knot inside that delica bead. And then just weave through a few more beads and then trim away your thread. And for the tail of thread that we had at the start, I'm just going to thread that through the delica bead to its left and then trim that away. And there you go. All we need to do now is add the bicone. This is very straightforward. So pick up your thread and pop it through the hoop on the bottom of your earring hook and tie your thread in a knot. Do a double knot. Then you're going to pick up one of your delica beads and your bicone, take both ends of your thread and place it through the beads. And with the last delica bead, you then want to take each side of your thread and thread it through both ends of your delica bead, crossing those threads over. Like this. And then pull that all the way down. Working from one side at a time, attach your needle to your thread and pull your thread up through the bicone. Then repeat that with the opposite thread and then tie your thread in a knot. Attach your needle again, pull your needle up through the delica bead at the top, tie it in a knot again, and then trim away your thread. Now you can go ahead and open the hoop on the bottom of your earring hook and attach your hook to your earring. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed. It was a very simple tutorial today, one that will help you master that technique and get a pair of earrings finished in under 30 minutes. It's quick, it's fun, and the end result is beautiful. So you can then take that technique and make yourself a bigger pair of earrings, adding those layers around a hoop and just expanding that out and making a big fun pair of earrings. So I hope you enjoyed and I hope you give that a go. Feel free to leave me a comment, hit the subscribe button and view my playlist for more tutorials. Thank you so much for watching.